Ladies, gentlemen, and gentle thems, welcome to my tier ranking of all 18 Ancestries from Daggerheart. I do have some experience playing this game. I've been playtesting a lot. I haven't gotten to play every Ancestry yet, but I've got some characters, some campaigns under my belt, and I just really wanted to get in here and talk about each Ancestry and how I feel about them personally. We're going to go over their abilities, as well as their kind of like general lore that's on their cards, to find out which one is the best. If not mechanically, then at least which one is the coolest. So I'm going to start off, we're going to go in alphabetical order, and we're going to start off with the Clank. Clanks are sentient mechanical beings built from a variety of materials, including metal, wood, and stone. These are your robot people, and they have some sick abilities. The first one is Powerful Design. Decide who made you and for what purpose at character creation. Choose one of your experiences that best aligns with that purpose and gain a permanent +1 bonus to it. This means that one of your experiences at level 1 is going to be a +3. The only way to increase your experiences is at level up. You can choose to give another +2 to one experience at a level up, but if you do so, you're sacrificing like a card or an ability score increase. It just doesn't really even out in my experience for something that you'd want, because these are non-combat abilities. So getting Purposeful Design means that you have that little bit of an edge over other characters when it comes to level up. You can choose to forego that ability pretty handily, I think. So I think for that ability alone, Clank already gets some points, but their real star of the show is Efficient. When you take a short rest, you can choose a long rest move instead of a short rest move. So when you take a rest, you get to choose 2 moves. If you're a Clank, you can always take one of those as a long rest move. This means that you can always recover all of your hit points, or all of your armor, or all of your stress, instead of just a D4 worth at level 1. This is insanely powerful. I think Clanks, I don't want to get overzealous and start putting things in S tier right away, but Clanks are an easy A tier, if you ask me. And maybe as we go on, we're going to realize S tier is in fact where the Clank belongs. Alright, moving on to the Dracona. Dracona resemble wingless dragons in humanoid's form and possess a powerful elemental breath. These are your D&D Dragonborn, or maybe even lizard folk. They can kind of be reflavored if you desire, because Daggerheart is big on reflavoring things. Their first ability is Scales. Your scales act as natural protection. When you would take severe damage, you can mark a stress to mark 1 fewer hit points. This means that, it's exactly what it says. When you take the maximum amount of damage, severe is the maximum amount, right? Yes. So when you take the maximum amount of damage from an attack, you, instead of marking 3 HP, you mark a stress and 2 HP. So this is basically, if your stress is higher than your HP, if you're a class that has higher stress, you can use that. Or if you're a class that has higher HP, you can still use stress as a little bit of a buffer. I don't love this ability, but I can't deny it is good. However, the star of the show when it comes to the Dracona is their elemental breath. This is one of, if not the only, attack in the game that is built into an ancestry that does not require you to mark stress. It is choose an elemental type for your breath, such as electricity, fire, or ice. This doesn't actually make a mechanical difference because the only damage types in Daggerheart are magic and non-magic. You can use this breath against a target or group of targets within very close range, treating it as an instinct weapon that deals a D8 magic damage using your proficiency. So the fact that this is a group attack, as well as the fact that you don't have to mark stress to use it, instantly brings up Dracona. I think I want to give this race overall... It is an instinct ability, which means it's going to be stronger on, like, a sorcerer, for instance, than it is on others. But everybody wants a little bit of instinct because it is your, like, perception stat in D&D terms. A or B? I think low A. Not as good as the Clank, but still pretty strong, just based off the fact of Elemental Breath. If Elemental Breath required you to mark a stress as well, this would easily be a C tier race. But I think Elemental Breath being just always on, it's not limited. You can use it as many times as you want. D8 is pretty good damage. It's longsword damage, but also it's an AoE. Very close range. Yeah, I think I can't give it any lower than an A because of how good Elemental Breath is. Moving on to Dwarf. Dwarves, I mean, these are your Tolkien dwarves. Big, long beards, short, stout, strong as hell. Dwarves are most easily recognized as short humanoids with square frames, dense musculature, and thick hair. It doesn't actually say anything about beards on the card. Interesting. Thick skin. When you take minor damage, you can mark 2 stress instead of marking a hit point. So, kind of the opposite of the Dracona's scales. When they take the least amount of damage, instead of taking any damage, they can mark 2 stress. That's pretty high investment, if you ask me. And then they have increased fortitude. You can spend 3 hope to have incoming physical damage. So they get resistance to, I assume, 1 attack. It doesn't actually say how long it lasts, but it has to be physical damage. I really like dwarves in Dungeons & Dragons. Unfortunately, I do not think that this ancestry holds up to that bar. I like them as like an idea, as a race. I'm a big dwarf guy. I like doing a Scottish accent for them. But I just, 3 hope is high investment, 2 stress is also high investment and all they really do is take less damage. I think this is our first D tier race, unfortunately. I hate to see it. Following up with the next Tolkien-esque race, we've got elves. Elves are typically tall humanoids with pointed ears and acute senses. They get quick recollection. They can mark a stress to gain advantage on any reaction roll. These are your saving throws. They are this game's equivalent of saving throws. They've just changed it to reactions. I don't care about this ability at all. Maybe in play, I would theoretically find it a bit more enticing, but you usually hit reactions when you roll with fear and then something bad happens, like a trap activates or something like that, or you fall off a cliff or something. That's when you really use reactions. You don't really use it in combat a ton in my experience so far, so I'm not super excited about this, and marking a stress to give you a D6, because that's what advantage is. It's an extra D6 on the roll. I just don't love it. Not a great ability. But they make up for it with Celestial Trance. During a rest, you can drop into a trance to choose an additional downtime move. This is kind of on par with the Clank, except for the Clank gets to choose a long rest move as part of their short rest. Instead, elves get to choose 3 of each. So they get to choose, instead of just 2 short rest moves, they get 3 short rest moves, or if they take a long rest, they get 3 long rest moves. This is very good. I think this is our first B tier. Quick reactions just doesn't do it for me in the way that some of the stronger abilities we've seen do. However, Celestial Trance is on par with the Clank's rest ability. Moving on to the Fairy. Fairies are winged humanoid creatures with insectile features. I really like this, that their fairies aren't just like Tinkerbell. They're kind of like weird bug people. This is like a fun play on fairy, if you ask me. I also like the way that they spell it. Their ability, Luckbender. Once per session, you or a willing ally can choose within close range, makes an attack roll. You can spend 3 hope to re-roll the duality dice. what to say about this. They've got to be standing next to you, which means if you're a ranged character, you have to like be next to the ally, which means you're getting into close range. But if you have like a melee fighting friend, you're going to get this a lot more. 3 hope is pretty expensive. That is the same that like a class ability would cost. So I'm not super excited about spending 3 hope on something. But rerolls, pretty good. It's better than advantage. You get to reroll the d12 instead of adding a d6. So could, turn a roll with fear into a roll with hope. You could do a lot with this. And it can also turn a failure into a success. It is also once per session, which means you don't have to wait for a rest or mark a stress like a lot of abilities cost. So it just comes back every time you play. However, this also means that once you use it, it's gone. There's no way to get it back until your session ends. So I like the once per session mechanic a lot. However, I could see if your table plays infrequently, but for long periods of time, like let's say you have like a 4-hour game that meets once a month, this becomes a weaker ability rather than like a 2 or 3 hour game that meets weekly. This becomes much stronger. So it depends on your group how good this actually is, and only you will know how much you'll get to use that. But also, it's not just locked to once per session. You also have to have the hope to spend it, which does pull it down a little bit for me. However, Fairy massively makes up for it with their wings ability. You can fly, period. That alone, insanely powerful. However, it also has, while flying, you can mark a stress after an adversary makes an attack against you to gain a +2 bonus to your evasion against the attack. Huge. There are not a ton of ways to gain increased evasion. So as a squishier character, like some kind of mage, this could be very good. And the only other way to get fly is as a seraph as part of their winged subclass. So as of now, permanent flying just forever, very good. And it makes it hard to give this anything less than top of A tier. Luckbender, probably not going to come up a ton because it has those 2 requirements you need to hit, but wings alone, I mean, maybe our first S tier, honestly, now that I'm thinking about this even more. Mark a stress to gain a +2 to evasion against that attack is pretty good. Especially if your GM open rolls. Yeah, if the Game Master open rolls, this is even better. However, if it's behind a DM screen or GM screen, then this becomes weaker because you don't know if the +2 is actually going to help you. Yeah, and there's no reason to ever not fly. I think S tier. I do. Moving on to Fawn. These are your satyrs. Fawns resemble humanoid goats with curving horns, square pupils, and cloven hooves. You get Serpine Leap. You can leap anywhere within close range as though you were using normal movement, allowing you to vault obstacles, jump across gaps, or scale barriers with ease. This is an okay ability. I think it really depends on how much verticality your GM uses in their planning. They also get Kick. When you succeed on an attack against a target within melee range, you can mark a stress to kick yourself off of them, dealing 2d6 damage and knocking back either yourself or the target to very close range. This is a get out of jail free card after making a melee attack. If you're a ranged character, much less potent, however. 2d6 is a lot of damage. It does require you to mark a stress, which we've already discussed I don't love. I think B tier for Fawn. Next up is Firbolg. Firbolgs are bovine humanoids typically recognized by their broad noses and long drooping ears. Previously, Firbolgs were like Fayish giant folk. However, Critical Role kind of cemented this idea that their Firbolg are cow people, and I like that a lot more. It is very evocative, and I really buy into the idea of them being cow people, and I'm just happy about it. They have the charge ability when you succeed on an agility roll to move from far or very far range into melee range. With one or more targets, you can mark a stress to deal 1d12 physical damage to all targets within melee range. This is insanely good for a warrior or some kind of like fighter character, somebody that really wants to get into melee as quickly as possible and like do a big sweep. Very fun ability. They also get Unshakable. When you would mark a stress, roll a d6 on a result of a 6, you don't mark it. This is so good. We've already talked about how I don't like spending stress to make attacks, and they even have an ability that would cause them to mark a stress. Every time they do it, it's not a reaction, it doesn't eat anything, it's not limited to like once per turn, or once per long rest, or once per session. They just always have this. They have a 1 in 6 chance to just not. Insanely good ability. I am going to give them the bottom of A tier. I think Firbolg is really going to be our barrier to entry into A tier. I think anything that's better than this is going to go up. Meanwhile, anything that's worse than this, it just belongs in B tier. I love Firbolg. I would be super excited to play one of these in a campaign. Next up is Fungril. These are scary mushroom people, and I love them. They resemble humanoid mushrooms. That's all it says. I love the art for this guy. Just a big, fat mushroom bastard. Real fun. They get Fungril Network. Make an instinct roll 12 to use your mycinal array to speak to others of your ancestry. On a success, you can communicate across any distance. This ability is very GM dependent, unfortunately. However, if your GM is big on, like you have a family and friends, you can always talk to them, which is sick. If you have at least one more Fungril in your party, this ability becomes infinitely better. However, it is very GM dependent. Their other ability is Death Connection. While touching a corpse that died recently, you can mark a stress to extract one memory from the corpse related to a specific emotion or sensation of your choice. This ability is sick. This is Speak with Dead, just always on. It does take a stress, and because the first ability is GM dependent, I think this is going to be, top of B tier. I love the Fungal Network. I love Death Connection. They don't really have an in-combat ability that's helpful, but in RP, I think this gets better and better and better, and it's just really about your GM buying into having cool mushroom people in their setting. And if they do, amazing. Great. Perfect. Next up are the Galapa. These are your Master Oogway turtle people. Galapals resemble anthropomorphic turtles with large domed shells into which they can retract. Their first ability is that shell. They gain a bonus to their damage threshold equal to their proficiency. Just always on, always increasing your damage threshold. Every time you increase your proficiency, this ability gets better. So as you get higher level, you take less damage, just always. Very good ability. They have a reaction to mark a stress to retract into their shell. While in your shell, you have resistance to physical damage, and you have disadvantage on action rolls. You can't move. This ability has a lot of downsides, but always being able to give yourself resistance is not a bad thing at all. The damage threshold, the mark a stress to retract, I think puts them above elves. Not above fungals, though. Our B tier is really filling up here. However, giant. This is one of my favorite ancestries. This is one of my characters that I've gotten to play so far in Daggerheart, was a giant. Giant seraph. Winged giant seraph. What a cool character. Being able to fly around and be huge like this, just sick. You know what giants are. Giants are towering humanoids with broad shoulders, long arms, and 1, 2, 3 eyes. This means that Cyclopses are giants, as are Triclopses. Just really, really cool to be, like, I love that Daggerheart isn't like, no, you have to be able to fit in dungeons. They go, no, be as big as you want, and make your GM figure it out. This is your Diane from Seven Deadly Sins character. And it's great. I love it. They have endurance, gain an additional hit point slot at character creation. Automatically amazing. If it was just this, already a top tier character. S tier for sure. But they also have reach. Treat any weapon, ability, spell, or other feature that has melee range as though it had very close range. Just giving you the ability to swing your axe or hammer at characters that are slightly out of your range. Amazing. Anything less than S tier would be a lie. The question is, are they better than Fairy? I think flying is pretty good, but Luckbender isn't. So the question is, do I think that additional hit points and reach are better than flying? 2 good abilities versus 1 very good ability. I think yes. I think Giants, top of S tier currently. Next up is Goblins. If you know anything about me, I love Goblins. My first book was about a goblin detective in a steampunk city. I love a goblin. I love a little dude. I love a little gremlin. Unfortunately, I think that Daggerheart misses the point of goblins pretty heavily. I think aesthetically they've nailed it. Goblins are small humanoids, easily recognizable by their large eyes and massive ears. That's what I want out of a goblin. I want a little dude, big eyes, big ears. That's what I want. However, their abilities just don't hit, if you ask me. They've got sure-footed. You ignore disadvantage on agility rolls. This is good, but it should be finesse rolls. I want to be able to sneak around. Daggerheart split up dexterity into 2 stats, agility and finesse. And finesse has all the sneaking stuff in it. Agility is like you're running and vaulting and jumping around, which is fine, but that's not what I want out of a goblin. This is the biggest miss in Daggerheart, if you ask me. In maybe the entire game. They also have Danger Sense. Once per rest, you can mark a stress to force an adversary to re-roll an attack against you or an ally within very close range. This isn't it. It's not it. I mean, Goblin Ranger and Warrior are very good because those are 2 agility-focused classes, I guess. But you're missing out on Goblin Rogue. And I know you can take agility, but then you're lessening your spell casting. It should have been finesse. And I'm letting my personal bias get in the way here a little bit, but Goblin is going to be our first F tier, and I hate to do it, but I want my goblins to be sneaky, and these goblins are not inherently sneaky. They're not inherently creeping around. They're not even inherently little guys. So for that, Goblin in F tier. Moving on to the last of our big Tolkien races, Halflings. Halflings are small humanoids with large hairy feet and rounded ears. Very important. Gnomes have pointed ears. Halflings have rounded ears. Important distinction. Halflings have Luckbringer, very similar to Fairy's Luckbender. At the start of each session, everyone in your party gains a hope. Amazing ability. So good. We've talked about how I like session abilities, and they are party dependent, like how often your group meets, how good this ability gets, but just always gaining hope is insane. Every party should have a halfling in it just for this. They also have Internal Compass. When you roll a 1 on your hope die, you can re-roll it. I mean, what is there to say? These are 2 amazing abilities. I have no problem giving halfling S tier. The question is, do I like it more than giant? I think giant abilities are always good. Halfling ability, it is game dependent on Luckbringer. So I am going to bring it just below giant, and I think that is fair. I do like that our tallest and our shortest races are both in S tier, though. That's fun. Moving on to human. Humans are most easily recognized by their dexterous hands, rounded ears, and bodies built for endurance. You know what? Agreed. They get high stamina, gain an additional stress slot at character creation. This is the opposite of giants, who gain an additional hit point slot. Obviously, this is good. There are so many abilities in the game that require you to mark stress to use. This is a great ability. They also have adaptability. When you fail a roll that utilized one of your experiences, you can mark a stress to re-roll it. Plays into their high stamina. I have no issue also giving humans S tier. The question is it better than flying? I'm gonna say no, not better than flying, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, they're humans. There's really nothing more to say. These are just two really good always-on abilities. That's it. Moving on to Infernis. Infernis are humanoids who possess sharp canine teeth, pointed ears, and horns. They are descendants of the demons from the circles below. These are your tieflings. You know what these are. They're, cloven hooves, long tails, your devil guys. They get fearless. When you roll with fear, you can mark 2 stress to change it to a roll with hope instead. This does not change the result on the dice. It basically just means that for marking 2 stress, you always have 2 hope dice, which is pretty sick. They also get Dread Visage. You have advantage on rolls to intimidate hostile creatures. This is a roleplay ability. If you play in kind of a dungeon crawl campaign, it's not going to come up too much, but Daggerheart isn't really built around dungeon crawl campaigns, so I do think Dread Visage is a pretty good ability. I am going to... 2 stress is high investment, as we have decided. I think they are better than... They're definitely better than Fawn. I don't think they're better than Elves. Advantage on reaction versus 2 stress. Elves do have their rest ability, which does help out. Yeah, I think that's where they belong. Qatari are really our first furry race. I guess you could say that like Firbolgs and Fawn are a furry race, but in my opinion, it's really the Qatari. And they are feline humanoids with retractable claws, vertical slit pupils, and high triangular ears. These are your cat girls. There's not much more to say. They have feline instincts. When you make an agility roll, you can spend 2 hope to reroll the hope die. Pretty good, all things considered. They also have retracting claws. You make an agility roll to scratch a target within melee range. On a success, they become vulnerable. That's pretty solid. 2 hope isn't as high as investment as some other stuff we've seen, and just being able to give out vulnerability, yeah, I think that's certainly an A tier. Alright, moving on, our last 3 races. Orcs. Orcs are humanoids, most easily recognized by their square features and boar-like tusk that protrude from their lower jaw. They have sturdy. When you have 1 hit point remaining, attacks against you have disadvantage. That means you're insanely good at tanking as an orc. They also have tusks. When you succeed on an attack roll against a target within melee range, you can spend a hope to gore the target with your tusk, dealing an extra d6 damage. Unlike other attacks we've seen, it doesn't require you to mark a stress to do it. Sturdy, just permanent disadvantage. I think this is better than Dracona. It's a tough call, but definitely better than Dracona. Ribbets. Ribbets resemble anthropomorphic frogs with protruding eyes, webbed hands, and feet. The other character I've played so far in Daggerheart is a Ribbet, and I love him. He's a Ribbet brave warrior, and he's been a lot of fun to play. They have the amphibious feature. They can breathe and move naturally underwater. Hasn't come up a ton, but, I mean, it could be good. just need to come into water. But the one I really like is Long Tongue. You can use your Long Tongue to grab onto things within close range. This alone, already really fun for roleplay. I've been using it to like swing around the battlefield and stuff, like grapple onto things. Really cool. Or just like grab things that I normally wouldn't be able to. However, you can also mark a stress to use the tongue as a finesse close weapon that deals 1d12 physical damage using your proficiency. It's the second highest damage you can have in the game. I guess it is the highest, but 2d6 technically maths out better. Still really good. Unfortunately, it does require a stress to use, so even though I love being able to breathe underwater, I am going to put him in C tier. And our last ancestry is the Simiah. Simiah resemble anthropomorphic monkeys and apes with long limbs and prehensile feet, not tails, as I thought. They get Nimble Climber, they have advantage on agility rolls that involve balancing and climbing, and they get Nimble. They get a permanent +1 bonus to evasion at character creation. This goes right along with humans and giants. However, I do think it is the best permanent +1, because invasion is so hard to come by. Did I say invasion? Evasion is so hard to come by. I have no problem putting them above halflings. However, Nimble Climber can't give them the edge over giants. It's such a situational ability when you are climbing things. I mean, if you're in a pirate campaign and you're constantly like climbing over ships and stuff, this becomes infinitely better. However, it is kind of campaign dependent. And looking at our list here, I do want to bump Fawn down one. And I think we also need to pull Clanks down a little further, because I forgot to mention that Clank's the only race that is campaign specific. There is one campaign setting in the Daggerheart core rulebook that Clanks are not available in. So I think that does bump them down to B tier, just because they aren't playable in one of the settings. But looking at the list, I feel pretty confident about this. Yeah, Goblins, worst race, Giants, best race. I feel bad about it. I want to put Goblins in S tier. I want them to be the best race in the game. Unfortunately, they just aren't. Anywho, thanks for tuning in, everybody. I've really enjoyed going over Daggerheart. If you want to see more ttrpg content, I know this isn't what I normally cover on the channel, but please let me know. I've had a good time going over Daggerheart. So if you want to see more Daggerheart tier lists, I'd be happy to do the classes or maybe the domains. And yeah, just give me a subscribe, comment to let me know, and I will catch you in the next one. See you later. Bye.